As a college student, Ella held on to a pure and quiet love for 20 long years. All she wanted was to show the boy she adored the very best version of herself. But Nick thought she was ordinary looking. With a casual smile, he told her that they should stay friends forever. To prove that they were truly just friends, Nick came up with an unusual agreement. Every year on July 15th, no matter where they were in the world, they had to make time to see each other. Hopelessly in love, Ella naively believed that time would eventually bring them together. But every year, Nick treated her with the same polite affection. After all, Nick was handsome, wealthy, and constantly surrounded by beautiful women. Why would he ever fall for someone as plain as her? In the first year, Ella decided to let go. She moved to London. She wanted to become a writer and hoped to build a new life there. After she left, Nick threw himself into a world of parties and excess. Ella's life, however, became a struggle. London was brutally competitive. She had no connections and no opportunities. Little by little, her dream began to fade. To survive, she took a job waiting tables at a restaurant. Every day, she endured rude customers and a harsh boss. Her clothes were always stained with grease. She felt like a machine repeating the same motions over and over again. Eventually, she broke down and called Nick. She wanted to hear a familiar voice and reclaim a small piece of the warmth they once shared, but Nick sounded distant. He brushed her off with a few casual words and hung up. He never heard the final whisper that barely left her lips. "I miss you. You're too." July 15th. Ella was still searching for direction in her life. Nick, on the other hand, was thriving. His talent as a television host set him apart, and female viewers adored him. When they met again, Ella felt an invisible wall between them. She was nervous and insecure, afraid of saying the wrong thing. But Nick saw straight through her. He pulled her into his arms and softly told her that she possessed a talent no one else could match. He urged her not to give up on her dream. Soon Ella understood the truth. His kindness was not romantic love. Nick saw her only as his closest friend. To help her relax, he took her to a seaside resort. Still convinced that their relationship was purely platonic, he booked only one room. The next day they lay together on the beach. Nick applied sunscreen to her back. The intimacy made them look like a real couple. They ate together, laughed together, and stayed up late drinking and talking. With a little courage from the alcohol, Ella finally said the words she had hidden for years. "I love you." Nick only smiled playfully and gave no real response. That evening, the ocean glowed gold beneath the setting sun. They walked along the shore as the sea breeze wrapped around them. Suddenly, Nick jumped into the water. After a brief hesitation, Ella followed him. They splashed and laughed together. Then Nick's gaze changed. It grew softer and more sincere. At last, he spoke the words he had buried deep inside. But in that very moment, Ella realized something painful. She and Nick belonged to completely different worlds. She was like a devoted fisherman who cared only about the light waiting for her on shore. Nick was an adventurer, forever drawn to the vast and unpredictable sea. Even adventurers eventually ran out of strength. Nick's reckless lifestyle began to catch up with him. His mental state deteriorated. That same year, his mother became gravely ill and approached the end of her life. Her final wish was simple. She wanted Nick to change his ways and build a normal life with someone as kind and gentle as Ella. His father, deeply disappointed, took away his car and froze his bank accounts. For the first time, Nick experienced real failure. In his pain, he called Ella. But by then, everything had changed. Tired of his inconsistency, Ella chose Ian, a man who had pursued her for years. Ian was neither particularly handsome nor wealthy, but she believed he could offer her a peaceful and stable life. Year 3. July 15th. Ella and Ian were living together. Their relationship lacked passion, but it felt secure. Nick, meanwhile, had hit rock bottom. His mother had died, and his alcoholism had cost him his television career. The only comfort he had left was Ella. During dinner, Nick repeatedly ran to the bathroom and mocked Ella's job with a bitter tone. At last, she exploded and stormed out. Nick followed her to apologize, but that only unleashed years of buried frustration. Through tears, Ella confessed that she was living with a man she did not truly love. Her days were consumed by endless responsibilities. She felt like a prisoner trapped in a cage. And Nick, once the bright and confident young man she adored, had become a shadow of himself. Before they parted, Ella held him tightly as tears slid down her face. Nick stood there in silence. Perhaps he finally understood what her confession of love had meant. Perhaps he felt regret. But missed chances remained missed chances. For the next 4 years, they had no contact at all. One day, Ian discovered the poems Ella had written for Nick. The two of them argued until they were emotionally exhausted. In the end, they accepted that their relationship could not be repaired and quietly separated. Single once more, Ella returned to writing. 4 years later, they met again at a friend's wedding. Nick was no longer the arrogant young man he had once been. He had become mature and grounded. Ella, wearing a traditional qipao, looked stunning. They exchanged a silent glance from across the room. Nick handed her a wedding invitation. Holding back tears, Ella smiled and embraced him. The boy she had loved for so many years was about to marry someone else. A year later, Nick became a father. To support his family, he worked long hours in a restaurant. He wanted to be a devoted husband and father. But his wife's betrayal ended the marriage after only 2 years. Time moved on. Nick entered middle age. Wrinkles lined his forehead and gray appeared in his hair. Gathering his courage, he traveled to Ella's city to find her. But Ella had transformed. At her side was a gifted and handsome pianist, a man who seemed perfectly suited for her. Quietly, Nick turned away. He finally understood that the girl he had once taken for granted was no longer waiting for him. What he did not know was that Ella was torn inside. She wanted to hold on to Nick, but she did not want to hurt the man she was with. This time, however, she did not hesitate. She ran after him. This was her final chance to see Nick. If she let him slip away again, she would regret it for the rest of her life. After 15 years of storms and countless near misses, they finally found their way to each other. Love could be irrational. It did not care about sacrifice or reward. All that mattered was that, in the end, it was you. 1 year later, they were married. Their days were sweet, as though every moment had been borrowed from fate. They dreamed of having a child and carrying their love into the future. But just when life seemed complete, fate changed everything. Ella became deeply depressed, and Nick planned a dinner to lift her spirits after work. That day he never made it. In his final moments, his thoughts were filled with Ella. He was overwhelmed by all the things he still wanted to say and all the years they had not yet lived together. And then everything stopped. After losing Ella, Nick became a shell of himself. He went through the motions of life, but felt nothing inside. One day he saw a woman on the street who looked strikingly like Ella. Consumed by grief, he rushed toward her and tried to embrace her. Her boyfriend responded by beating him badly. His father looked at him and said only one thing: "If you truly love her, then you have to keep living. Love is not meant to leave you standing still. It is meant to help you move forward." Something inside Nick finally awakened. He found a new sense of purpose and decided to begin again. And then, Ella woke him up in bed. Time had returned to that morning 20 years earlier. The memory of rejecting her the night before was still crystal clear. Everything he had lived through felt like a long and vivid dream. He did not understand how it had happened. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. This time he would never let her go.